I'm Emily Chang, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, Intel sinks in after-hours trading despite beating estimates. We'll break down the chip maker's fourth quarter warning. Plus, Zenefits looks beyond its checkered past with a new product launch. Our exclusive conversation with newly minted CEO David Sachs ahead. And could owning a car become merely a hobby in the years ahead? We'll catch up with Lyft co-founder John Zimmer on the future of driving and his continuing battle with Uber. First, to our lead. Intel shares are slipping in after-hours trading while the company beat on earnings and revenue. It reported fourth quarter sales may miss estimates. The dimmer outlook may indicate slower PC demand and that manufacturers will again be sitting on a stockpile of chips. Bloomberg editor-at-large Corey Johnson spoke with Intel's executive vice president leading manufacturing, operations, and sales, Stacy Smith, right after earnings were released and asked him about the outlook ahead. Take a listen.
We had an outstanding third quarter, and our view of the second half is up significantly from where we were 90 days ago. And that strength it's a combination of we're seeing some strength in the PC business, but as you see in our Q3 results, we had record revenue in the data center and record revenue in the Internet of Things group, which is kind of our strategy playing out here. Specific to the PC segment, we're up from when we originally set the guidance for Q3. We're up by almost $1 billion in revenue, and the PC segment is the largest piece of that. What we're seeing in that market is we're seeing some in-market strength, particularly in the business PCs, and we're seeing our customers starting to put a little bit more inventory in place as they anticipate the sales in the fourth quarter. And then moving to the fourth quarter, what we're expecting kind of a normal PC market, but we think some of that inventory gets consumed, and so we have a little bit of a below seasonal Q4 against the backdrop of a very strong second half and much stronger than what we thought.
Why are PC makers in this day and age doing such an inventory build that will remind us of years past when they would sort of over-order and try to manage their stuff by getting it in early?
So I wouldn't characterize it as as excess inventory in any shape or form. I think what we've seen is that the PC manufacturers are managing inventory very, very lean, and as they saw in demand strengthening, they just put a little bit more inventory in place to support that level of sales. So I don't think it's excess inventory. I just think it from a very lean baseline, put in some inventory, and then they'll consume that inventory in the fourth quarter.
So you're actually seeing strength in PCs. Where is that coming from?
So what we saw is there's pockets of strength all over, but the main difference from the guidance that we had set 90 days ago is that the business client was stronger, and particularly in mature markets. And so I think this is large enterprises upgrading computers. And when you look at it, that installed base of computers has gotten to be fairly old. With the new devices that we've brought into the marketplace, they're thin and light, great battery power, lots of performance. And so I think that has just become a compelling upgrade for employees of large companies.
And what's the effect on margins of that mix shift towards those newer, lighter machines for you?
Well, I think you can see it in our Q3 results. We were just a hair shy of 65% gross margin for the company, which is at the very high end of our range, and that's 3 points higher than we expected when we started the quarter. So I think it's what you're seeing at Intel. It's a combination of in demand and then really great execution. Our 14 nanometer process technology, which is kind of the best manufacturing technology that's out there, is coming down the cost curve fast. We're executing on the restructuring, so we're getting a little bit of leverage there, and that just resulted in great top line and great bottom line growth for the company.
Intel Executive Vice President Stacy Smith there, our editor-at-large Corey Johnson joining me now. So how troubling is the fourth quarter outlook to you?
Well, it depends on, it depends on Intel's customers, right? How honest are Intel's customers being with them? Intel's had this interesting relationship with its PC manufacturers over, 30 years in terms of how much the customers order and how much they need. Now, Intel does not have supply issues in the present era, and so that's not an issue where the customers have to over-order. But he talks about them ordering in advance of the fourth quarter, but not building inventories, operating lean was his word. That's a really, really important word because tech companies blow up when they get too much inventory in the pipeline. So when you see the stock sell off today, what you see is pessimism among certain shareholders saying, I don't believe it. They might say there's no inventory buildup at customers. I don't believe it. If they're pulling orders forward from Q4 into Q3, then Q4 is going to be light. Then maybe there's inventory in Q4 that's going to be a problem.
Shares still down, just over 3% after hours. talk to us about what's going on with the PC market, because over the last few quarters, there were signs that maybe it had bottomed out.
And his commentary there suggests that maybe it has, that there are in fact pickups in the enterprise, and with a lot of new form factors, they're actually seeing a pickup in sales. His commentary, both on the conference call and in our interview, was a little more bullish than the numbers might reveal. So we'll see how it plays out. I mean, what we know generally is that replacement cycles across all computing, whether it's even smartphones or PCs, is being stretched out longer and longer. So we'll see if PCs come back. But we've seen a little bit of a pickup here, at least down from the doldrums, but we may never get to the numbers we hit in 2011. That may be peak PC, as they say in the oil business.
All right. Corey Johnson, our editor-at-large, with Stacey Smith there. Thank you so much for that update. Turning now to another company out with earnings. Yahoo beating analyst estimates in the third quarter. A rare bit of good news after a large-scale hack of user data was publicized last month, threatening the purchase of the company's main web assets by Verizon. While there was no analyst call this time around, Yahoo CEO Marissa Mayer sent out a statement saying, quote, "In addition to our continued efforts to strengthen our business, we're busy preparing for our integration with Verizon. We take deep responsibility in protecting our users and the security of their information. We're working hard to retain their trust and are heartened by their continued loyalty as seen in our user engagement trends." eMarketer senior forecasting analyst Martin Utreas joins us now with more. So, Martin, with this deal pending and in a very gray area right now, how important are these numbers actually today?
The numbers in general are what we expected. We see earnings and margins basically where we expected, but I think the data breach is still a concern. And the reason for that is that Yahoo Mail is one of their core properties. They have a lot of users there. This is a global audience, and basically, you know, different countries have different take when it comes to data concerns, when it comes to privacy. So we can see this having an effect in general for their ad business, because a lot of Yahoo Mail works as a gateway, basically, for a lot of their services, a lot of their ad products, a lot of their other properties. It drives traffic to news, it drives traffic to sports. They push a lot of notifications through their app. So we still see this as having, you know, it could have a material effect in the future.
Now, we're going to be speaking with our M&A reporter, Alex Sherman, a little bit later this hour. We have no indication that the deal is not going to happen, though there have been some warning signs from Verizon's general counsel. What have you heard? Have you heard any indication that this deal could be materially compromised?
In general, we don't think the deal could be compromised. I think that would implicate a lot of legal consequences, and I don't think either company would be interested in that at this point. However, we think it does open the door to negotiations. So we think, you know, having this problem with Yahoo Mail does open the door for Verizon to negotiate with Yahoo and try to get a better deal out of this, probably.
Perhaps a discount is in store. How much do you think the hack attack actually compromises the value of Yahoo's core business?
We do think it might have an effect in their core business. Again, a lot of those engaged users with Yahoo, they are going through mail. In different countries, they might have bigger concerns when it comes to privacy. For example, in Germany, and this is a global audience that Yahoo has with their mail property.
Now, I did speak with Marissa Mayer the day that the deal with Verizon got announced, and you know she is still working at Yahoo. She has agreed to sign on to see this deal through. Take a listen to what she had to say.
Immediately, I've got two priorities. One is seeing this transaction through to close, but also watching over the value of our Asian assets and the equity stakes that we have there. And then moving forward, you know, we'll ultimately figure it out.
Martin, what is the number one thing Marissa Mayer needs to be doing right now?
I think they need to secure investors, and they need to secure Verizon that this breach is not going to have a material effect on their earnings, on their margins, and on the engagement that users have right now with their properties.
All right, well, that's what she indicated in her statement. We will be watching closely. Martin Utreas, eMarketer, senior forecasting analyst, thanks so much for joining us. Two stocks we are watching now. IBM sank as much as 4.5% in Tuesday trading, but pared that loss to about 3%. This after Monday's earnings report fueled increased skepticism about the fundamental health of the company. Meantime, Netflix shares spiked 19% in Tuesday trade after signing up nearly 3.6 million subscribers in the third quarter and putting to rest investor concerns about slowing growth, at least for now. Coming up, after a scandal-plagued year, Zenefits is relaunching. We'll hear from CEO David Sachs on that effort. This is Bloomberg. Now to Zenefits. The HR software maker has relaunched, integrating with QuickBooks, Microsoft Office, and Slack. This after a rocky year for the company. Founding CEO Parker Conrad resigned after failing to comply with state insurance regulations. Since then, Zenefits has paid about $1 million in fines and renegotiated a lower valuation with its investors to avoid a potential lawsuit. Conrad was replaced with his then number 2, David Sachs. I sat down with Sachs, now CEO, who took over in February, and asked him how the company has changed.
We've completely fixed that problem. In fact, I think we got so good at fixing it that we're now an industry leader in this type of licensing compliance.
Talk to me about the first day after you became CEO. You go back to the company. What do you say to employees?
Right.
What do you do that day?
Yeah, I mean, so I sent a letter to the employees my first day, and I reiterated at the company meeting, and I told them that the company had a compliance problem, and the problem was bigger than just a failure of technology and process. Those things have been fixed, they're pretty easily fixed, but it was also a problem of culture, because the culture just didn't sufficiently prioritize compliance, and that for Zenefits to really fix this problem and not end up in some other kind of hot water, we really had to improve our culture and adapt it to the later stage company that Zenefits had become.
Let's talk a little bit about culture. Yeah. The founder, Parker Conrad, created a program that allowed sales reps to cheat on state insurance licensing tests. And this is a heavily regulated industry. There were reports of, unlicensed brokers selling health insurance. There were infamous reports of sex in the stairwells. How do you change the culture, and are you sure the culture is changed?
Well, some of that stuff didn't actually happen. Some of that stuff is the press getting carried away. So,
what didn't happen?
Well, I mean, I hate to disappoint people, but I think that stairwell story wasn't true. That was a building memo that somehow blew up into this story. But there is, a lot of truth to the fact that on licensing, the company didn't prioritize compliance the way it should have. We had that issue with the macro. And so it was important for us to change the culture of the company. And the way we did that is we declared new company values, and we've really made compliance central to everything we've done.
What was a turning point for you, a moment where you felt you were back on the right track?
You know, I think one turning point was when we actually got praised by one insurance commissioner who praised the new management of the company for riding the ship, her term. And, you know, I can think of a bunch of startups that at various points have gotten into regulatory trouble, but I really am hard-pressed to think of any that have ever been praised by a regulator the way that Zenefits has been after correcting its problems. And so I think getting praised by regulators, that was a turning point in terms of it showed that we had reset our relationship with regulators. And I think today is a huge turning point.
How big do you think the market is for all-in-one HR for small businesses? And how big a piece of that pie do you think Zenefits can get?
Well, it's a huge market because the way that most small businesses are doing their HR right now is on paper and in file cabinets and maybe spreadsheets. And if they do have systems, they're using multiple systems that don't talk to each other, and so it's very fragmented. So it's a huge opportunity. It's greenfield. And what we've seen over the past few years is that since Zenefits came to market with this idea of all-in-one HR, virtually every company in the HR space has copied it, and not just little startups who are kind of nipping at our heels, but big, large incumbents are now claiming to be all-in-one HR solutions. So whatever mistakes that Zenefits made in the past, the one thing it certainly got right was this market position, because everybody's trying to copy that.
You're trying to close the book. Your competitor keeps reopening the book and saying, when they go low, we go high. This is the CEO of Gusto is certainly not shy.
Well, that's a great example of going low, actually, just in a kind of a slightly more subtle way. But yeah, I mean, what they're trying to do is feed on what happened in the past and to try and sell themselves. But, you know, the problems he's pointing to are things that we've already solved. And I think what customers care about is product. And what we've launched today is a brand new payroll system that's opening up in wide release in the state of California. It's cheaper than their product, and it's more integrated with time and attendance and vacation tracking. And so I think that what customers will care about is who has the best product, and we feel really good about that.
Your customers may also care about the election. You know, you are serving small businesses. What are your thoughts on Clinton versus Trump?
You know, since I've been CEO of Zenefits, but also if you go back to when I was CEO of Yammer, and reporters always ask me what I think about politics, I generally have tried not to get involved for the simple reason that the country is very polarized about politics, and the last thing I think you want to do as a CEO is bring that polarization into your company. And so I've tried to avoid those types of political stands, but I know I get asked about it a lot.
Some of your old friends are not avoiding the standoff. You know, I've talked about Reid Hoffman about his support for Hillary Clinton. Peter Thiel is donating $1.25 million to Donald Trump, even as these sexual assault allegations rolled in. You're good friends with Peter. Have you talked to him about this? I mean, do you have any thoughts on?
Well, I respect everyone's right to take their own, sort of have their own political opinions, and you know, Peter is a great friend, and he's been a great board member to us, and you know, what he does kind of on his own time and with his own money is his business.
Maybe the sex in the stairwells thing is a myth and it didn't really happen, but what Zenefits has been going through, some people have pointed to this being the result of the rise of a bro culture in Silicon Valley. You wrote a book called The Diversity Myth with Peter Thiel a long time ago in your Stanford days, and I'm curious how your thoughts on diversity have evolved, and if your experience at Zenefits has sort of changed your views on the importance of diversity in building and scaling a team.
Well, I do believe in diversity, and I've always sought to create the best teams possible, and we've done that at Zenefits, and we did that at Yammer before, and we've always sought to be inclusive and to find great talent wherever we can, and so, you know, we believe in that.
So talk to me about the product and the integrations that you're announcing today. How difficult were those to nail down, and you know, how do you move forward?
So it was a lot of work. So what we built is, so Zenefits came to market with this idea of all-in-one HR, but the reality is no one company can do everything, and certainly not do it well. And so the only way to be a true all-in-one is to create an ecosystem. And so what we've done here is we've launched the first app store experience for HR for small businesses. And you can just go into Zenefits now and you can install apps as easily as you can on your phone. It's just a couple of clicks. And we've launched today with 17 partner integrations, and this includes companies like Google and Salesforce and Expensify and eShares, and the list goes on and on. So this is really a giant expansion in this sort of all-in-one category, because we're the first company to go from trying to do it all ourselves to including like all of these best-of-breed apps.
Do you think technology can really solve all the problems in HR? I mean, these problems, some of these problems go so deep. We're talking about benefits, we're talking about work-family policy, and I wonder if some of those problems tech actually can't be hacked. They need other kinds of solutions.
Well, I think tech can make things a lot better. So we know, for instance, according to the Small Business Administration, that small business owners spend about a quarter of their time dealing with HR administrative tasks, and compliance is a big issue for them. And so Zenefits makes all these problems a lot more manageable for them. And we actually surveyed our customers and asked them, how much time does Zenefits help you save? And the average was a month of time, which is just amazing to give back to a small business owner or their HR administrator a month of time, because Zenefits takes all this paperwork and administration off their plate.
And how far away are you from settling with everyone? I know you've got some. You've made some settlements. You've got some open situations going with various states.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, we've been very proactive and forthright with regulators. We've gone to them, and as a result, they've been pretty quick to settle with us. And so over the last 8 months, I think we settled with about 9 states, which in regulatory time is very quick. California is our lead regulator, so that one is still outstanding, but I feel pretty optimistic that we're going to have all these problems behind us, certainly by the end of the year.
Zenefits CEO David Sachs. Still to come, reviews of Google's new Pixel smartphones are out. So far, so good. So how much of a dent will the company make in a market dominated by Apple and Samsung? We'll discuss. And a reminder that all episodes of Bloomberg Technology are now live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV, weekdays 6 p.m. in New York, 3 p.m. in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg. A story we are watching. Tesla says buyers who place new orders for Model 3 vehicles can expect to receive their cars as soon as mid-2018. Production is still slated to begin late next year, but shares briefly paired gains after the update was initially interpreted as a delay on the introduction of the vehicle. Tesla said in a statement, today's website update doesn't reflect any change in our plans. We adjusted the date on our marketing page to reflect more accurate timing for new or future reservation holders. Separately, Tesla is scheduled to unveil a new product on Wednesday. And Airbnb is teaming up with SolarCity to encourage hosts to install solar panels. Those renting out properties on Airbnb can now get up to $1,000 back if they use SolarCity to set up the energy system. On the other hand, existing SolarCity customers who become Airbnb hosts will get a $100 credit to stay in another Airbnb property. Airbnb had previously inked a similar deal with NRG Energy's home solar division. Coming up, Samsung is dealing with the biggest smartphone recall of all time. But our next guest says the brand impact might not be as bad as it sounds. We'll catch up with Ben Beharan of Creative Strategies next. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Nina Melendez, and you're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's begin with a check of your first word news. President Obama is responding to claims made by Donald Trump that the November presidential election is rigged.
I'd advise Mr. Trump to stop whining and go try to make his case to get votes. And if he got the most votes, then it would be my job to welcome Mr. Trump, regardless of what he said about me or my differences with him on my opinions, and escort him over to the Capitol, in which there would be a peaceful transfer of power.
Trump has called on his supporters to monitor polling in certain locations to prevent cheating. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump take the stage tomorrow night in Las Vegas for their third and final debate. Moderator Chris Wallace of Fox News says he plans to ask questions on debt, immigration, the economy, and the Supreme Court. And last month was the hottest September since record-keeping began. That's according to researchers at NASA. September's heat also marks the 11th consecutive month of record-high monthly temperatures. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,600 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nina Melendez. This is Bloomberg. It's just after 6:30 Tuesday evening here in New York, 9:30 Wednesday morning in Sydney. I'm joined by Bloomberg's Adam Haig with a look at the markets. Adam, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Nina. So we should get a bit of green on the screens when trading gets underway in equity markets across Asia. From a currency point of view, the yen's pretty much closed against the dollar where it did with the Tokyo market close last night. So there probably won't be too much of a bounce in Japanese shares, but we should get a little bit of that rollover from a strong US session and the rally there. Big news today, obviously the Intel news coming out after the bell in the US. We'll be keeping a close eye on the suppliers across Asia who supply into Intel there. And the big data points today out of China, we've got GDP, industrial production and retail sales all coming out of the region's biggest economy. So plenty for investors to keep an eye on there. And a big M&A deal in Australia, Tats and Tabcorp, big gaming groups facing a lot of offshore competition. They're going to merge in a deal that's valued around $10 billion. I'm Adam Haig in Sydney. More from Bloomberg Technology next.
This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. Back to a Bloomberg scoop. It seems Verizon may be getting impatient with Yahoo. While Verizon remains interested in the web properties it agreed to buy in July, the lack of progress on Yahoo's investigation into a 2014 data breach is causing some misgivings internally about the deal. Our Bloomberg News Deals reporter Alex Sherman with me now from New York. So, Alex, first of all, do we have any indication whatsoever that Verizon could actually pull out of this deal?
Not yet, Emily. We don't know. We don't really have any evidence at this stage that Verizon wants out. To be honest, it sort of behooves Verizon to take this stance whether or not they want out, because at this stage, all of the leverage in this deal sort of swings Verizon's way. There's no real downside to say there may be a material adverse effect by the hacking with this deal, because really the worst that can happen is Verizon gets no discount. Maybe sort of what they're hoping for perhaps is a discount on the $4.8 billion deal that was announced several months ago. And then at the extreme would be, of course, they would pull out of the deal entirely. But there's no real evidence yet that Verizon wants to walk away.
Now, the investigation is ongoing, and Verizon says it's gotten little information and wants more. What is the information that Verizon really wants and needs to know?
Well, they're going to need to figure out how material this is. I mean, this becomes a legal issue very quickly. So it's going to be turned over to the lawyers, probably of both sides, Yahoo's lawyers and Verizon's lawyers, to figure out, does this in fact warrant something that's called the MAC clause, or the material adverse effect clause, which is standard language for any M&A transaction. And then the lawyers will sort of have to get together and figure out, okay, so what exactly is the monetary amount of damage here? Does that in fact become material? And then if it is material, what then? Does Verizon really want to walk away here? I mean, they went through a really arduous process to finally acquire Yahoo. To just sort of walk away and come away with nothing, that's a lot of work for zero. So I would imagine that sort of the angle on this would be, we still want to buy Yahoo, but maybe we can buy them for less, and maybe we can even settle before we send this thing to court and have it, litigated for months and months and months on both sides.
Okay. All right, Alex Sherman keeping us up to date. Our deals reporter actually in San Francisco. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. Reviews are in for the first real made by Google phones, and many are calling the new Pixel handsets the best Android phones on the market. That sent shares of Google's parent company Alphabet to a record high. But of course, there is a gaping hole in the Android market. The world's biggest smartphone maker, Samsung, still reeling from a global recall of its flagship Note 7 smartphones after discovering the phones have a tendency to overheat and potentially explode. The crisis costing Samsung over $2 billion this quarter alone, and a consumer class action lawsuit was just filed against the company in New Jersey. So how are all of these developments shaping the smartphone wars? Creative strategies analyst Ben Beharin with me now here in the studio with some new research. And first of all, what did you find out about Samsung in particular and how damaging this recall could be?
So what's interesting is, we knew this coming in, that Samsung had particularly pretty loyal buyers. Samsung's repurchase rate, intent, and loyalty is second to Apple's, with around 60% of their customers saying that they will buy another Apple phone. We saw only about a 20% impact of their existing customer base that we surveyed that said that this would cause them both to have a negative impact on their brand, but also strongly consider not buying a Samsung product. Where we did see the biggest impact was consumers who did not have Samsung products. That went up to over 50% of customers who said they would now strongly consider not buying a Samsung product.
20%, it's not huge, but in this is a war. Doesn't every percentage point count?
I think every share counts, no question. I think we thought it was going to be a little bit higher, honestly. I think because of how widely publicized this event has been, awareness of it is off the charts. And so we did think it was going to be really high. So coming away from that, seeing that just really only 20% of their customers said that it gave them a negative impact of their brand. For the most part, their customers still said they felt quality products and had a really strong affinity toward their brand.
Let's talk about awareness, because Samsung has actually set up stations at airports where customers can exchange their phones. Some people don't necessarily know about it. Some people love their phone so much they don't want to turn it in.
Right. So the Note 7 was really a regarded product. Most, even the consumers of those that we interviewed, did not want to give it back. They're looking at Samsung's lineup saying, I don't really want to go to an S7 Edge or something else. So they really wanted that product. So it's kind of, as hard as it is to give those up, it's the right thing to do, because these things are being banned all over the place and they are, a safety concern.
And yet Samsung still doesn't actually know what has caused this. Isn't that a cause for concern, especially if you're considering getting the next one?
I definitely
or any Samsung product.
Yeah, I definitely think that we will need some sort of a public statement from them on what happened, to know that they've solved this problem, isolated, and then it won't happen again.
So what does this mean for, let's talk about Google and the new Pixel phones. The reviews are out today. They're mostly positive. Will Google get a big bump from this debacle?
So I think for Google, it's going to take some time. Our smartphone study happened to also be around the time of the Pixel, so we actually to ask questions around the Pixel. We still saw most of our consumers in our panel had no idea what the Pixel was. Those that did actually had some privacy concerns, and more often than not, they said, over 35% said that Google has to prove to them that they're a quality smartphone maker before they'll consider it. Now, that being said, you have a Nexus base out there that was kind of a hardcore loyalist base. You have HTC customers that are showing some affinity toward the Nexus. So I think there's probably a 7 to 8% market opportunity for Google, which is not bad. And again, the margins they're making on hardware could be quite lucrative. But this is going to be a multi-year strategy for us to see if they're a significant player in smartphone hardware.
What about Apple? One of the things that you found out was that iOS is highest ever?
Yeah, so we've been tracking for the last couple of years that Apple just continually keeps taking share, both from a platform standpoint, so iOS in terms of Android. We've known that the iPhone was the largest brand out there in terms of installed base in the US, but to see iOS continue to gain share just shows that we're consistently seeing a trickle rate of switchers from Android, and we saw that again. We're still seeing around a quarter of Android customers saying that they have strong intent to switch to iPhone in the next 6 months. And to be honest with you, the most interesting thing that we saw is we actually saw a pretty significant, about 44% of Apple's existing US customer base saying that they intend to upgrade in the next 6 months, which is a lot higher than a lot of people thought. There was some questions around would they wait for the iPhone 8 and this so-called super cycle, and we're actually seeing a very old base of iPhone 6s and 5Ss that are going to upgrade in the next 6 months.
So over the next few months, as we head into the holiday season, tell me what happens in the upgrade cycle. Who wins, who loses, how much?
So we think, again, we think Apple's got a much larger upgrade cycle coming, as long as, again, they can meet demand, right? Like we talked about last time. I think as long as they can meet demand, we think this is going to be a good quarter. It will be a return to growth quarter. We think, again, that the next 6 months is actually going to be a steady trickle rate for them as a big portion of their base now gets back onto new devices. So we expect a good run, and I think that'll, again, cause a lot of people to question what happens next year if a good chunk of this base upgrades now.
And how much does Samsung lose?
Well, I think, again, the Note will cause, I think, again, our takeaways from that is that it's probably not going to cause a mass defection from Samsung, but it is going to cause people who are on the fence, right? So an HTC, an LG, or Google, other Samsung brand or other Android brands we think will stand to benefit the most from Samsung's issues, but we don't think it's a mass defection. But we do see churn even from Samsung to Apple, and I think that'll play in as well.
All right, Ben Beharan of Creative Strategies, always great to have you here on the show. Great research. Check it out. A story we are watching, a stolen email leaked by WikiLeaks shows Apple CEO Tim Cook was on Hillary Clinton's shortlist for vice president. The email from campaign manager John Podesta discussed a first cut of people to consider for Clinton's running mate. Also on that list, both Bill and Melinda Gates, Elizabeth Warren, and former Democratic rival Bernie Sanders. Apple isn't commenting. Coming up, we will speak to the president and co-founder of Lyft on why he thinks car ownership will be a thing of the past next. This is Bloomberg. A story we are watching, London regulators have stepped up a battle with Uber. The city's transportation agency is requiring all Uber drivers to meet an English language requirement in order to get a private hire taxi license. The new rule comes after Uber successfully sued the city to block that requirement when it applied only to drivers from non-English speaking countries. That proposal was considered discriminatory. Uber has faced increased resistance in London as officials try to protect its historic black cab industry. And staying in ride-hailing, Lyft is ratcheting up the competition, driving full force into driverless technology after its main U.S. rival, Uber, began publicly testing its own self-driving fleet in Pittsburgh earlier this fall. Lyft President John Zimmer wrote a 14-page manifesto laying out plans to tackle the so-called third transportation revolution. In it, he predicted that by 2021, most of Lyft's rides will come from driverless cars. John Zimmer joins me now here in the studio for more on his aggressive and ambitious forecast. So you said in 5 years, Lyft will have a fully autonomous fleet.
The majority of Lyft rides will be in major U.S. cities will be autonomous in the next 5 years.
So walk me through what you are doing now to get there that fast.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things that's most interesting is that the cost of transportation is coming down. What people don't think about often, they just think about maybe a $200 or $300 monthly car payment, actually is about $750 with all the costs added in, so about $9,000 a year for the average American. So what we're doing now is we're adding new products that bring down the cost, so Lyft Line, when you share a ride and can get it at a lower cost, as well as beginning various tests on the autonomous end that will allow us to add additional products that bring down the cost even further.
How much of an impact is Lyft Line having on the fundamentals right now?
In major cities, it can be up to 50% of all rides.
Really?
Yeah.
So you guys have a partnership with GM. Their business is selling cars, and I'm curious, are you on the same page about this self-driving future? CEO Mary Barra has said she thinks car ownership may drop, but actually see a resurgence.
Yeah, I think one thing that's super interesting about General Motors is that a lot of their profits are coming from rural environments, and urban environments is a big opportunity of growth for both us and them. And so a lot of what I talk about in the vision is what's going to change in urban America as it relates to car ownership. And we've talked to many car companies, and when they invested the $500 million, a big reason why was because they agreed that a large percentage of urban Americans are going to switch over to transportation as a service, which is what we do at Lyft.
So talk to us about what you're actually doing with GM right now and what sort of steps you are taking together to realize this future.
Yeah, so there's two main parts of the partnership beyond the investment that they made. So one is vehicle access. So we wanted to make car ownership optional for our passengers, but we've also made it optional for drivers as well. So a Lyft driver who doesn't own a car or doesn't have access to a vehicle that qualifies on our platform can go rent a car by the week and drive on the Lyft platform. So that's one thing we're doing. We have thousands of vehicles out there on the road. That's been very, very successful. And the second thing is we're planning for this autonomous transition. And so we'll have more specifics to announce in the months ahead, but we're excited to be working with them on that.
Can't wait to hear the specifics. Elon Musk has said he wants to create a ride-sharing network of semi-autonomous Teslas, but it would still be based on ownership. These would be cars that people still own, and you disagree with his vision. Why?
Yeah, I disagree because there's a lot of benefits to kind of the large fleet operations that Lyft already does. So imagine, I think the best way of understanding it is from the consumer's perspective. So consumer, in the future, we believe, just like they pay for Netflix or Spotify, will pay for a monthly subscription to transportation. We'll be able to take care of all your parking, all your fueling, all your cleaning and maintenance. You won't have to worry about that at all, and you'll get a consistent experience. You could choose from the family Lyft service, the business Lyft ride, whatever experience you want, we're going to be able to offer you without all those hassles. In a world where you have private ownership, you're not going to have a consistent experience. Someone's going to have less stuff in their car, and cars won't be available at the times they're most needed in the peak commute times.
There's been a lot of change in the ride-sharing business. We saw Didi buy Uber's China business. Didi has a seat on Uber's board. You have a previous alliance with Didi and Ola and Grab, a global alliance. So how does this partnership between Didi and Uber impact you guys? I mean, do you think they sold you out?
No, I think what came true is that we said we don't want to invest capital in China. I think they have a very different regulatory structure, and that played out. You saw that deal happened right after some major regulatory changes took place, and we believed all along that would be a market that behaved very differently. So we never made any investments in China, and I think that paid off.
But are you still working with Didi? They have a seat on the board of your main competitor.
We're still in conversations with them. We do have part of the global roaming, so that when you land in a different country, you can use these different services that we've done with them.
So does that mean, by saying conversations, is there a potential that the deal could be off?
I'm not going to comment on that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the changing fundamentals of your business. Do you feel that in this environment, you need to show profit sooner rather than later? Are investors getting antsy?
I think that's important in any business, and I think we're showing that the fundamentals of our business, whether it's the unit economics per ride, are profitable, and the overall spend is getting more and more efficient. So we're showing the right trend, and we're also, we've raised $2 billion. We raised that money to invest in future growth, and there's a lot of our investors that want us to be aggressive and make sure that we capture as much market share as possible, because the future value of this opportunity is so large.
So how much do you have in the bank?
we've raised $2 billion, and we have the majority of that in the bank.
Has the capital environment around ride-sharing changed?
I haven't noticed a major change, to be honest. I think the overall capital environment has changed. But it's hard to find an industry with so much upside as people change over to transportation as a service. So I haven't seen a tightening in that sense in our industry.
So Uber sold its China business to Didi. They're no longer hemorrhaging billions of dollars there. What is the route for you to gaining sustainable market share when you have a competitor that is potentially stronger than ever?
Yeah, I think what people forget is that we grew up in this environment. Lyft was born in an environment, where Uber had previously raised a lot more capital than us. The capital differential today is less than it has been historically. And that said, when you invest in a market and you're the smaller player, it can be more efficient to gain share from our perspective than it would be for them to do that. So year over year, we've grown our share in the U.S. So both companies are growing. Lyft is growing faster.
In what city do you think you're doing best against Uber?
I think in various cities. San Francisco is an incredibly strong city for us. New York has been one of the fastest growing, I believe 10x year over year growth. So there's cities all across the country.
Would you ever expand internationally?
Yes.
Where?
I gave a very clear answer on the first part, but I think the where we go first is something we'll announce later.
And look, there have been reports that Lyft was trying to sell itself and had difficulty. What is your response to that? And where is Lyft in? This business is changing so fast. Where are you in a year? Where are you in 5 years?
Yeah, Lyft is not for sale, to be clear. And we're, Logan, my co-founder, and I have been working on this vision of making transportation more affordable, more sustainable for the last almost 10 years. It's about 9 years now. And our goal is to continue to do that for a very, very long time, to the point where transportation as a service through Lyft is more affordable and more widespread than car ownership.
All right. John Zimmer, Lyft co-founder and president. Always great to have you here on the show. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, tomorrow on Bloomberg, do not miss our exclusive conversation with Dell CEO and founder Michael Dell. Eric Schatzker will be sitting down at the Dell EMC World Conference in Austin, Texas, 1 p.m. New York time. And up next, Orbital ATK makes a comeback. We'll tell you why the SpaceX competitor's latest launch was so important to future contracts. This is Bloomberg. In this edition of Out of This World, orbital ATK returned to space for the first time since losing a rocket in an explosion 2 years ago. The spacecraft blasted off from a Virginia launch pad carrying small satellites and supplies bound for the International Space Station. Along with SpaceX, Orbital holds the first commercial contracts to ferry cargo on behalf of NASA. This mission is the first for Orbital's revamped Antares 230 rocket, powered by a Russian-made engine. The company had been launching its capsules atop United Launch Alliance's Atlas V rocket, while its own was grounded. And a story that is trending, CBS turning the hit mobile game Candy Crush into a TV show. The network has signed on for an hour-long live-action game show involving contestants, prizes, and one giant interactive game board for crushing all the candy. Lionsgate is working with Candy Crush maker King on the format of the show. King hasn't been able to replicate the success of its original hit game, so it is looking for other means of making money from its properties. Its parent company, Activision Blizzard, rose today on the deal. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Tomorrow, we are live from the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit with some of the most influential names in the industry, including Chamath Palihapitiya, Walter Isaacson, and Steve Case. And remember, all episodes of Bloomberg Tech are now live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV, weekdays at 6 p.m. in New York, 3 p.m. in San Francisco. That's all for now from San Francisco. This is Bloomberg.
The campaign to retake Mosul in Iraq began early this morning. It comes more than 2 years after ISIS first took control of Iraq's second largest city in June of 2014. Iraq's military says it has already inflicted heavy losses of life and equipment on ISIS. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter called the offensive a decisive moment in the fight against the Islamic State. Up to 1 million civilians may be caught in the crossfire in what could become a major humanitarian crisis. Joining me now from Washington, David Ignatius of the Washington Post and Eric Schmidt of the New York Times. Let me begin with a simple question. What's necessary to overtake and kick ISIS out of Mosul? David?
Well, first, obviously a strong military offensive, but one that's careful about dealing with the ways in which that battle space has been prepared by ISIS, the way it's been booby-trapped, the likelihood of suicide bombs, the possibility that chemical weapons, which we know ISIS has, might be deployed in that battle space. The second point I'd make, beyond the strong initial push, is the need to understand how the pieces of Mosul will be put back together the day after. This is the most complicated part of Iraq, where all the different groups, Sunni Arabs, Kurds, Turkmen, some Shiites, come together in a very large municipal space that's been brutally suppressed by ISIS. I have to be honest, I have not yet seen convincing evidence that the day after has been adequately planned for, so that worries me as this offensive starts.
Why has it taken so long to build together? What is the coalition that was necessary before you launched the attack?
Well, Charlie, they had to build an army again, basically, an army big enough, as David says, to take this city. It was 2 million people before the ISIS rolled in there in June of 2014. So they had to build up about 12 brigades of new forces, army forces, as well as counterterrorism forces. Then they had to deal with Shia militia that are also going to participate in this some form, and the Kurdish Peshmerga fighters. So it's a very complicated mix of fighters, and to coordinate this offensive against the city is going to be very difficult.
And what's the role of Shia militias?
Well, they are going to be playing a role outside the city right now. They've been playing a role, obviously, down in other cities as well, but right now they're going to be kept outside the city. They've been an effective fighting force, but as you get up into this area, it can be very problematic if they're going into Sunni-held areas.
And how long, David, should this battle last, do you think? I mean, is it a protracted battle over months, or will it reach a decisive end earlier than that?
We honestly don't know, and we get conflicting signals. In part, the war against ISIS has become a war of momentum. There's a feeling that in both Iraq and Syria, they're on their back foot. The Euphrates Valley, Anbar province, this is to the southwest of Mosul, fell much more quickly than people expected after the fall of Ramadi and then Fallujah. And most of the Euphrates Valley flipped as the tribes, the Sunni tribesmen, came on board with the government of Baghdad and with the U.S.-led coalition. So that argues for keeping up the momentum and moving quickly. This is a very big city, and I wouldn't be surprised if you saw pushes in parts where they think that ISIS is weak, but then a more protracted campaign in other parts. One thing they have to be worried about is a very large refugee flow out of Mosul as panicked people and ISIS fighters flee a city that's under this enormous attack, which will include heavy U.S. air bombardment, I'm sure. Where do those refugees go? How do you avoid the new refugee problem from destabilizing Iraq even further? So those are questions. On the one hand, you want to keep the momentum up, move quickly. On the other, make sure that you can digest each piece as you move forward.
And the most important thing is can you take and hold and govern?
We have learned painfully watching these wars in the Middle East that the essential recipe is clear, hold, and build. That's the phrase the U.S. military uses. So you send in a strong initial force to clear, but that doesn't mean that you can hold that territory. It certainly doesn't mean that you can build effective governance. And again, I have not seen the evidence that the last two, the hold and build parts, have been carefully thought through.
Eric, if somehow Mosul does fall, and it's not over a long period of time, what does that say about the effort to go into Syria and go after the second ISIL stronghold, Raqqa?
Well, you have to remember, Charlie, Syria is going to be a very different fight. At least here in Iraq, the U.S. has the full cooperation of the government of Iraq, as well as various players, including the Peshmerga. In Syria, they're dealing with kind of a pickup team of fighters on the ground, fighters including Syrian Kurds and Syrian Arabs. Now, so far, they've been fairly effective in moving across that belt of stretch of areas that ISIS can control. That is, until the Turks interrupted that momentum a couple of weeks ago. So right now, the Syrian Kurds are marshaling their forces. The U.S. and the Special Operations Forces that are advising them, assisting them, are now looking to focus on a campaign in Raqqa. Ideally, for the American forces and American officials here in Washington, these campaigns would overlap. They'd be able to put pressure on Raqqa roughly the same time that you're putting pressure on Mosul. But right now, they have not assembled enough of the Syrian Arab fighters as part of this coalition that could go into Raqqa to move forward on that fight. So the air campaign will continue in Syria. And according to American officials that I talked to just today, they're hoping to get the campaign against Raqqa underway roughly, sometime in the weeks ahead, but roughly while Mosul is still underway as well, so they can basically put ISIS in a vice between the two cities of Mosul and its de facto capital of Raqqa in Syria.
And what happens to Aleppo in the meantime?
Well, unfortunately, Aleppo is a whole other situation. Of course, the president has said the United States will deal with ISIS first. In Aleppo, the tragedy there continues, the humanitarian efforts. But right now, the focus of the Obama administration is defeating ISIL.
David, you know a lot. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Charlie, I just was going to make the point following on what Eric said. I think the fact that the situation in Aleppo is so catastrophic from the standpoint of the U.S. and its allies is one reason that we are encouraging the Iraqis to go forward with the offensive on Mosul now. That is one part of this campaign where, relatively speaking, the U.S. Has a stronger leverage, a better order of battle, understands the campaign. I think in terms of what Eric was describing, there had been hopes for hitting Raqqa soon after. The problem is that the main force the U.S. was expecting would lead the clearing operations in Raqqa, the Syrian Kurdish militia known as the YPG and its allied Arab fighters in a coalition called the SDF. I'm told have been much more wary of jumping into that battle. They see the fight for Raqqa as being the bloodiest fight of this war, equivalent to the battle for Kobani, in which thousands of Kurdish lives were lost and the city was just destroyed. So I think there's a real reluctance for the Raqqa battle, which is seen as the final battle. That's the place where all the ISIS fighters, people who flee Iraq, the people who flood other parts of Syria, will concentrate in Raqqa for what will be a fight to the death.
What's the role of Americans on the ground, special forces and other Americans on the ground, both in Iraq and Syria?
Just to begin that and then to turn to Eric, I was lucky enough to travel with General Votel, our CENTCOM commander, into Syria and see the American Special Operations Forces who were training both the Syrian Kurds and the Syrian Arabs for the battle in the east, preparing for the battle in Raqqa. It's a powerful sight to see how the U.S. organizes.
And Charlie, at the Pentagon just this afternoon, Peter Cook, the spokesman, acknowledged that there were U.S. ground spotters on the ground who are traveling as special operations forces who are attached to the Iraqi and Kurdish officials, to the forces on the ground, that is, calling in airstrikes. So the big question is just how close American forces are to the front lines. Mr. Cook said that right now they're behind the front lines, but clearly with some 5,000 troops in Iraq, American troops there, at least several hundred of them are participating in this advising role. Many of others are serving as logistics and intelligence support. Clearly, you have the overhead. You've got Apache helicopter pilots. You've got combat attack planes that are carrying out airstrikes. There's a very significant supporting role on the ground, while there are obviously the Kurdish and Iraqi forces. As many as 30,000 of them will do the lion's share of the fighting in Mosul.
Is there any hope that somehow this can be without the Russians? And are the Russians at all interested in seeing this stop? David?
So I think Secretary Kerry has been again meeting with the Russians and a broader group in the hope that the Russians will see a diplomatic solution as being in their interest. When you ask U.S. military officials if they see any military solution in the West, in the Aleppo area, that would involve U.S. forces, they say flatly no. This is something for the diplomats to do. They've said this for months. The problem is that at each point we have been hoping that the Russians were serious about the diplomatic agreements that they seem to be negotiating, and then those have proved to be meaningless, and the slaughter in Aleppo has continued. What's interesting is that in this latest round, the U.S. has brought in the regional powers. The U.S. has brought Iran and Saudi Arabia to this table to try to work with the U.S. and Russia, and that's, I think, kind of a last desperate hope.
And will it make a difference?
Well, if the Iranians are a key factor here. If the Iranians decide that the time is right for a settlement in Syria, then it'll work. The question has always been, why should the Syrian regime of President Assad and his Iranian supporters and the Russians stop fighting when, by all evidence, they're winning? They're about to take the city.
Eric Schmidt, David Ignatius, thank you so much.
Thanks, Charlie.
Nancy Pelosi is here. She is the minority leader of the House of Representatives. She previously served as Speaker of the House from 2007 until 2011, making her the first and only woman to occupy that post. She may reclaim the gavel next year. Donald Trump's failing poll numbers have made Democratic control of the House a possibility. With only 22 days until Election Day, voters are increasingly disenchanted with the tone of the campaign. Trump's repeated warnings of a rigged election are spurring distrust in public institutions. I'm pleased to have Leader Nancy Pelosi back at this table. So let me just begin with this. So where do you think the race is at this moment?
Well, if you believe in polls, they show Hillary Clinton with an ever-expanding lead. The Mammoth poll just had it like 50 to 38. First time I think Hillary has hit the 50 mark. But we don't know. In other words, until the people speak, and they are the boss, they rule, you don't know what it is. So we all just stay prepared for the opportunities that come forward.
Do you think this election will have a down-ballot impact?
I think it will. 2012 did not, right. But I believe that this election will have a down-ballot influence because people are really tired of obstruction in Washington. And what the Republicans have said, and they've said it even today, that they're prepared to obstruct. They call it checks and balances, but it's obstruction. It's exactly what they said around October 20th in 1996, right? When they gave up on winning the election against Bill Clinton, they said
when he was running against Bob Dole.
And when he was running against Bob Dole, who was wonderful. I love Bob Dole. But nonetheless, when they realized that race wasn't going to win, they started talking about checks and balances. That translated to the impeachment of the president.
Well, and you're suggesting what? That in fact, if in fact it looks like Hillary Clinton is going to win and win big, that some voters will say, I want checks and balances in Washington. And therefore, or the opposite of that, they don't want checks and balances.
The Republicans are saying that they're using checks and balances for a euphemism for obstruction. And
well, but there are a lot of people who think it's a good idea to have one party in power in the White House and down Pennsylvania Avenue, another party, at least in the House, in control.
Well, we had that when we had the majority and President Bush was president, and we cooperated with him. We did not support him in the war in Iraq. We did not support him in privatizing Social Security, but in every other way we worked together and got some great accomplishments. Contrary to when they won the majority and President Obama was president, they said the most important thing that we can do is to make sure he doesn't succeed. Their leader in the Senate said that, Mitch McConnell. Right. And the Republicans in the House supported that. So that is not checks and balances. That is obstruction. And that is what they, again, said in '96 and then impeached.
What McConnell said was our most important goal is to beat Barack Obama when he seeks re-election.
Well, that he is not a second-term president. Right. And so that's not a contribute to any success. And what their behavior was after that was one of no, nothing is our agenda, and never is our timetable. Just say no. And that is not fair to the American people.
Let me stick with this idea. I mean, what has to happen for you to regain the majority in the House of Representatives? How many seats?
We need 30 seats to win. The important thing is for the American people to win in this election, so that hopefully we can take this debate to a place where their interests are served, where the concerns of the American people...
That's exactly what Paul Ryan says. He says the same thing. It's important for the American people to win.
I've never heard him say that, but the fact is that he has an agenda in Congress, the Ryan budget. Show me your values, show me your budget. The Ryan budget says we're going to remove the guarantee from Medicare, we're going to cut $185 billion from education, we're going to give tax breaks to the wealthiest people, and we're going to block any funding for contraception, to name a few.
Okay, but you argue...
To name a few. And by the way, Governor Spence has voted for the Ryan budget 2-3 times, and he also voted for the when President
Mike Pence,
Bush,
who was the vice president of running.
Right, Mike Pence voted 3 times for that Ryan budget that would take the guarantee. And one more point. Okay. And when he was there, he voted for President Bush's initiative to privatize Social Security. So while all this distraction is going on about other subjects, there are bread and butter issues that affect people very directly if you depend on Medicare or Social Security, if you want education to be affordable, if you want a woman to have a right to choose.
Paul Ryan, just to take, and some other Republicans would say, look, they so much are in disagreement with Donald Trump, you know, that they don't support his ideas. They don't support his ideas about a ban on Muslims. They don't support his ideas about a wall. They don't support his ideas on trade.
Well, I'm so glad you're asking these questions because I want to set the record straight.
I know you do, because I know what you say.
No, it's not what I say. It's what they say. Look, Donald Trump is a here today, gone tomorrow presidential candidate. For a long time now, he has echoed what the Republicans have been saying in Congress for a long time.
John Boehner says that if, in fact, there's a Republican majority after the 2016 election, that Paul Ryan will still have the same problems he had dealing with his caucus.
That's right.
He'll have the same problems. That's one of the reasons he's happy not to be there.
Well, that's one of the reasons why when you say, well, Paul Ryan differs with this, he's not talking about his... We're talking about the people that we are opposing on the ballot right now who strongly... Now, and what we see in the measure of public opinion is if you're in one of these Republican districts, represented by a Republican at the moment... Which
has been redistricted often.
And it's sort of a suburban moderate district. If you say you're for Trump, by 11 points, you lose the moderates. And if you say you're against Trump, by 11 points, you lose the Trump people. So they have, damned if they do, damned if they don't, forgive my crudeness.
Okay, but do you have any problems with your own caucus? I mean,
no.
You know, the question arose during the negotiations and the seeking of a grand compromise between John Boehner and Barack Obama.
This is very interesting because some of those people are writing who don't really know what really happened are saying, oh, neither of them could come to terms. No, we came to terms. And we even came to their terms. And in 2013, at the time of the shutdown of government, I think we've had this conversation before. But just to revisit for a moment, we had an agreement, House, Senate, Democrats, Republicans, and the White House, that our budget would be $1,058 billion. $1,058 billion. We thought it was too low, but it was a compromise. We didn't have the majority, so we agreed. The Senate Republicans agreed to that. Everyone agreed. And then the House Republicans said, no, we're not going a dime over 988. Their own chairman, Mr. Rogers of Kentucky, said, Chairman Rogers, the Republican chairman, said, this makes it impossible for us to meet the needs of the American people. Their own chairman said that. My members said we could never vote for that. It's obscene. We can't anoint that. I said, say anything you want about it, but don't say you won't vote for it, because you might.
Now, look, there's a reason that you became Speaker of the House. It was because of, one, the power of your organizing ability, it was a power to raise money, and your powers of leadership. That's why you became Speaker of the House.
Well, let's not divert ourselves from what the Republicans did on the budget. Mr. Boehner said we're not going a penny above 988, or else we shut down government. So we all, well, the Senate, Democrats and Republicans said, okay, we'll go to 988. The White House said we'd go to 988. I called the chairman, the Speaker, Mr. Boehner. I said, look, my members really don't like this at all. They think it's too low. It weakens our country in terms of innovation and education, et cetera. But if that's what it takes to keep government open, I will give you 100% of the House Democrats to vote for 988. And he said, I can't bring it to the floor. Because they figured we wouldn't agree with it and they could blame it on us. We agreed they couldn't. The only people who were not supporting the Republican budget number, the House Republican budget number, were the House Republican budget members. So when they say that the president was always extending compromise, the hand of compromise, and we always said to him, just get it done, because the American people need us to make progress, even if it's not as fast as we would like. Right. And so that's what Boehner had to deal with. And then a year later, he had to deal with shutting down government because of Planned Parenthood, shutting down government because of this or that, and he just walked out the door.
But one quick historical point about that. There was some question as to whether he could be reelected Speaker. And I understand that Nancy Pelosi was prepared to provide the vote for him to be elected Speaker. Is that correct?
Nancy Pelosi was prepared to respect the institution of the House of Representatives and not
provide the votes for John Boehner to be reelected Speaker. 30
people, extreme Tea Party people.
You said, if you need us, we're here. That's what you said.
I said I have the back of the institution.
I just interviewed John Boehner.
I don't know. The fact is...
You were there to help him if he needed, because you thought...
Well, it was in the interest of the institution. Okay. In other words, you can't let the most extreme element of the Republican Party, which is anti-governance, anti-science, anti-Barack Obama, by a few votes, upset the regular order of the Congress.
Okay, I want to talk about a number of things. Let's assume there's a majority, House majority is on the Democratic side.
Right.
What's the agenda? What is it primarily? What?
The major difference in the parties in an election is about the economy.
Okay.
Trickle-down economics versus middle-class economics to increase the purchasing power of middle-income families, consumer confidence to inject demand into the economy, create jobs, bigger paychecks. Trickle-down, if it creates jobs, that would be good. If it doesn't, so be it. That's the free market. So that's really the main thing, is how do we move forward, as we did with our recovery plan. First, 1 week after the president was sworn in, we passed the Recovery Act to create good-paying jobs to lift up the middle class and those who aspire to it. So that, to act upon that would be creating jobs through infrastructure and the rest. So first, the economy. The other two things that I tell you this, you're my friend, you I think would trust what I say to you. I'd rather lose the election if they said today we'll pass a gun violence protection bill and an immigration bill. Those two things are very important to the safety of the American people, which we take an oath to protect and defend, and also the character of America, a nation constantly invigorated by newcomers to our country. Those two things are very important. Now, what would be on the agenda to begin with will depend on, of course, the President of the United States.
Could you have done that during the first 2 years of the Obama administration?
Because you need 60 votes in the Senate.
Right.
But the issues are so much more high profile now. President Lincoln said public sentiment is everything. We did a lot. You know, we did the Recovery Act, we did the Affordable Care Act, we did the Wall Street reform, we did the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, we ended discrimination in the workplace with Lilly Led. We did a large number of things. But in terms, and we only had 60 votes for a short period of time because Senator Specter was a Republican until like June. Senator Franken didn't become certified until like July. Senator Kennedy died in August, or end of July, August. So no, I think we could do them now. I think we would have Republican votes to do them now. I think they would pass right now if the Speaker put them on the floor. I think there would be enough Republican votes, bipartisan support for background checks for guns, no fly, no buy.
You have said about the election results for the House. You have said that if the election was today, you think it's a possibility.
Yeah.
You could see a Democratic majority if it was held today. A gain of 30 seats.
That's right.
But you can't say, well, it'll be like 2 weeks from now on election day because?
Yeah. Because of big, dark, endless money.
But don't you have a lot of money, too?
Well, we have a lot of money, but we don't have endless.
Yeah.
We have.
You mean their PAC money is bigger than your PAC money?
Well, their PAC money is unknown and endless. We don't have endless. But here's the thing. I think that I believe that Hillary Clinton will be president for reasons that seem obvious, but also because we're not stopping the work that we're doing on the ground. We own the ground. We own the ground and have chosen places as our priority.
But is it your impression that the Republican Party is supporting Donald Trump on the ground or not?
Well, 42% of the Republicans, that's 42% of the people support Donald Trump. That's where he is in the polls, 38 to 42. Right. I think that many of them are supporting him for the reason that Republicans support Republicans. They don't want to pay their fair share of taxes.
Do you think this will have a lasting impact on our respect for the political dialogue? Do you think it has a lingering sense of distrust for institutions? Because it is said that, that's exactly what some of the Russian hacking is about, causing a suspicion about our election process.
That's what their goal is to undermine democracy wherever it exists, and they just don't do it here in the U.S. But, I think our democracy can withstand Russian hacking and Donald Trump's candidacy.
We certainly hope so. Well, we certainly hope that, that the institutions of government are strong enough for any candidacy to destroy them, regardless of who it is.
Right. And also, from the standpoint of the responsibility we all have to say, how can we get this back on track for the American people? Because I say to my Republican friends, and I do have Republican friends in high places.
Well, you're prepared to deal with them.
In high places.
Yes.
Take back your party. Take back your party.
Yeah.
Take back your party.
You think
this is
Donald
the
Trump
Republican
kidnapped the Republican Party?
Well, I think before Donald Trump, I think the Tea Party hijacked the Republican Party. And part of the reason that some of the Republicans are annoyed with Trump is because he's revealed the Republicans in Congress for who they are.
But you were saying that there's a difference between the Republican Party and Donald Trump, and Paul Ryan represents, he's the highest elected Republican in the country.
Right.
And you've been saying, trying to make the argument here at this table, well, there's no difference between them and Donald Trump. In terms of policies.
Right, I made a distinction. No, I made two distinctions. One was the bad stuff that Donald Trump spews forth, they have been spewing forth for a long time. Whether
the bad stuff.
The anti-immigrant, anti-Mexican.
Oh, you're talking about a small minority of the party.
I'm talking about chairmen of committees. I'm talking about Peter King of Long Island talking about Muslims. I'm talking about Steve King of Iowa. But you should read, it would bring tears to your eyes to see what Peter King has said about Muslims in our country. But let me just say, that's one subject, and that's where I'm saying they are very much like Trump. In addition to that, what is on the ballot are Democrats and Republicans down ballot.
Hillary Clinton should run.
No, wait a minute.
Okay.
I'm talking about the Ryan budget. No guarantee of Medicare, no funding for contraception, cutting education, tax cuts for the rich. I'm talking about a very distinct budget from the Democrats, and where's the compromise when they want to give tax cuts to the rich and cut education and not invest in our future? And by the way, nothing brings more money to the Treasury to reduce the deficit than the education of the American people.
But let's talk about the fact that there's some Americans here who feel like that they have an economic insecurity.
That's right.
They feel like that their future is not as bright for their children as it was even for them.
That's right.
And they're worried about and they're attracted to Donald Trump. Should Hillary Clinton be speaking to them and listening to them and trying to understand them?
Yes, absolutely.
And is she doing that?
I think so.
Do
we
you?
all are. I mean, this is who we represent. We have the fact that what happened in 08.
Then why are they choosing Donald Trump and not because it seems like they're saying we want something different because Washington is not working?
Well, they like his anti-trade message.
Because they think it costs jobs.
They do.
That's what they think.
Yeah, that's what they think.
And you think that?
Well, I think that some people lose jobs and some people gain jobs. But here's the thing.
But you're against the TTP, too.
Yeah, because I don't believe in trickle-down economics.
You're just against that trade.
No, I don't believe in trickle-down trade. I believe in globalization.
What do you think Brexit was about?
Immigration and trade.
And globalization.
Immigration and trade. But I always used to say to Obama and President Bush, if you want a trade bill, start with and you want an immigration bill. If you want a trade bill and an immigration bill, you have to start with a big jobs bill. Because people think that they've lost their job from immigration. Hardly anybody. Some people have lost their jobs because of trade. That's for sure.
Okay. It is said that some of the disclosures that came out of the Goldman Sachs speeches had been revealed during the primaries. Bernie Sanders would have had a field day.
Like what?
Well, Bernie Sanders would have said, look, this is what I've been telling you. Hillary Clinton is...
What revelation?
You know about, I'm sorry, you know what was disclosed in the speeches about sort of open borders and a whole range of other issues, and about trade, and, you know, there was a sense that there's a difference in a private position and a public position. That was what Bernie Sanders was saying.
But I think when they said public position and private position, they're talking about what you emphasize in public that is non-menacing to people. I trust Hillary Clinton not to support TPP, this version of globalization.
Even though your president is strongly for it.
Yes, indeed. Well, I opposed President George Herbert Walker Bush and President Bill Clinton on China trade.
Well,
because I think
you have a thing about the Chinese.
I love the Chinese. But I don't, what they're doing in climate and the rest of that. I don't love what they have done in terms of restricting access to their markets, human rights, and also pirating of our intellectual property, of selling missile technology to Pakistan, non-conventional technology, ring magnets, if you want to get really specific, out of their country.
Let me ask you this. Has the Democratic Party, and I think the answer is yes, and whenever I ask this of Hillary Clinton or anybody else, the Democratic Party has turned left, hasn't it?
I think the Democrat... no, you know, here's what the thing...
Why do you reject terms like that?
Well, I'm from the left, so but I've never left enough for the left, that's for sure. they would never call me left.
Certainly are. That's right.
But here's the thing. No, here's the thing, and this is important to know.
Right.
The Republicans have left the whole middle open. They have moved so far.
Well, now it depends on what you consider the middle.
Well, what we're saying is where we can find common ground. We can find common ground on strong jobs bills that build the infrastructure of our country, reduce the deficit, grow paychecks. We can find common ground there. So what I say to my members is whatever it is that you believe, and I say this about the Republicans too, I respect your position if that's what you believe, if that's what you represent in your district. Now we all have a responsibility to find common ground, if we can, on subjects that we can. For some, we can't. And that we'll have to stand our ground. But that doesn't have to be every subject. So there's plenty of room for us to move to the middle.
Like criminal reform.
We can find, hopefully we can, well, every time we think we're close, they kind of move. But for criminal reform would be a place that we can. Look, when President Bush was president, again, I said, the war in Iraq and privatizing Social Security, no. But we passed the biggest energy bill in the history of our country, like taking tens of millions of cars off the road. He wanted nuclear, I wanted renewables. Right. We got raised the emissions standards.
So you're saying this is government working?
But you have your person on the other side of the negotiation has to want something.
Or have the capacity to deliver the votes if he wants it.
I understand, but they have to want something. If you're negotiating with someone who doesn't want anything, you really can't make too much. You can't have any leverage. So, but their agenda is anti-governance. You have to understand, their success is that nothing happens.
So if Paul Ryan or John Boehner says they can't deliver their caucus, do you believe them? Or do you believe they simply don't want to make a deal?
No, I think they can't deliver their caucus.
That's a problem.
Yeah, I think they can't deliver their caucus. And that's why when John Boehner says we're going to have checks and balances, it means we're going to obstruct, because they can't deliver their caucus. Now, what does that mean to the American people? What it means to the American people is we have a new president, whoever she may be, and she comes into office, and if they're going to obstruct from day one, that's not fair to our country, to our future, to the world, really, because of who we are as a country. But I just keep hoping, as I said to you before, Lincoln said, public sentiment is everything. You have to take it to the public so they can make a judgment on what people will do. Are they going to shut down government? That's just so irresponsible. As they did when they didn't accept our offer to give them what they asked for, shut it down for 17 days. $25 billion to our
What's the chance
GDP.
that you think you'll get those 30 seats?
Right now, I think we're at least 20. So at least 20. So we're talking about single digits. We're fighting it out for
so
single digits.
So you think you have 20, you just need to find 10 more?
Well, I think I have more than 20. But
So what do you think?
Okay, so here it is. The bigger Hillary's majority, the better it is for us.
It is said that the Trump people hope to suppress her vote, and that's part of the reason for the scorched earth policies.
Well, that's true, because if they don't turn, and that's the second point, turnout.
Do you believe Donald Trump will accept the results of the election, whatever they are?
I think he will. I think at the end of the day, he will. But to say it's rigged 3 weeks in advance and all the rest of it, first of all, it isn't. Harry Reid and I put out a statement inviting our Republican leader colleagues to join us in terms of saying we have historically, as hard fought as our elections have been, as questionable as they were in 2000, we always accepted the results of the election. So I think that who we are as Americans can withstand even a Donald Trump candidacy, but I think that he will do the right thing by the American people.
Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Pleasure to see you.
Thank you.
Issa Rae is here. Her self-produced web series, The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl, earned her critical praise and attention from television executives. Insecure is her highly anticipated HBO comedy series, which she co-created alongside Larry Wilmore. The series explores the modern black female experience. Variety writes that the series marries specific issues with universal questions to create situations that are both precise and affecting. Here's a look.
Go, shawty. It's my birthday, but no one cares because I'm not having a party, because I'm feeling sorry for myself. I just want to be more confident. Brave me. Like, no me. I want to be that person. I love these Fendi. I have a problem. Converse. I have a problem.
I love how you just, like, don't even care. A few of the others had some concerns.
Are they concerns that they can talk to me about? They're having secret white meetings, and they're sending secret white emails.
Girl, you know how these white people are.
Oh, okay. That's it? I spent my entire 20s with a dude that I'm not even going to end up with. Sometimes I don't know what we're doing. I don't want to just sit on the couch with you for the rest of my life.
You want to break up with me?
No, I'm not ready to talk about this.
You said I want to talk.
We are not about to be the black couple fighting in Rite Aid. I mean, maybe I'm not satisfied. No, maybe I want to be down properly. What the hell? What are you doing here?
I don't know. It's your fantasy. I've always been your what-if guy.
What are you doing? Oh, I was just asking Siri where Malcolm Jamal Warner was born. It's Brooklyn. You know, we were talking about this being the last year of my 20s and how I need to make the most of it. I don't have time for the anymore. We gonna have some drinks tonight. You gonna get so up. Ha, ha. I had it all wrong. You know, I don't need to be Miss No. I'm now Miss Give All the. I think I like who I'm becoming. That's backwards. No, it's not. So you got these on your back now?
I'm pleased to have Issa Rae back at this program for the first time. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Let me just talk about, so you went to Stanford
did.
And developed Dorm Diaries.
Yes.
You know, I mean, what's really interesting from there, then to Awkward Black Girl to Insecure, there is a progression of you creating things for yourself.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to break into the television industry, and I feel like I found a shortcut via the internet, and I found that by accident, by way of, you know, procrastination, being on Facebook and YouTube constantly, and it spurred the idea of, oh my gosh, what if I just made a show online to share